This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Listen up, writers. Got a handle on 3 methods for getting your character's backstory on the page? Is your dramatic tension really tense enough? Does your theme weave deftly through your plot and character arcs? If you didn't give a resounding yes to any of those questions, check out my fall series of writing workshops at wordessential.com/events. Hello and welcome to this week's Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Kathryn and I are talking about feedback, where to get it, how to take it, if it's even worth it.
All the things. Feedback can be tricky sometimes. 1, it can sometimes be tricky to get. And 2, once you get it, is it feedback that you should be taking? Is it feedback that you're comfortable taking? You know, there's a lot of different aspects of feedback and how you handle it. So
yes. Yeah. So what do you want to start with?
I've had good feedback and I've had bad feedback. And I don't mean bad feedback like things that they said about my book were bad, right? I mean, it was someone that maybe our personalities did not work well together, that the way that they delivered the feedback versus the way that I can accept criticism did not work well. Not to say that they wouldn't have been someone else's best critique partner ever, right? But it wasn't going to work for me as a writer. And I think some of that takes self-awareness, knowing whether you're being too sensitive or whether this is genuinely not a good situation for you. And I've stuck with critique partners longer than I should have because I thought I just have to get over myself. And then realized that what I was actually doing was tanking my ability to continue writing because of the way that I was viewing my writing or myself as a writer was more negative after the feedback than it should have been. So every person's going to have that balance between encouragement and criticism that they can take or that they want to take. And finding the right person that is able to do that is important.
Right. Yeah. I think so. This raises an interesting point, saying person singular or partner. If you're only getting feedback from one person, that one voice has a lot of weight,
a lot of power.
And if it's a professional you're paying and you trust, that's different. But if it's a peer-to-peer situation, then you really need to be choosy. Be choosy. Know the person, know that the person is going to be, honest, be critical in a good way, right? But one of the best critique experience I had was my earliest, actually. I was in a writing group and we met every 2 weeks. And I think we gave each other 10 or 15 printed pages per time. And we would be reading for 8 people a session. So it was a lot of work. But it made so much sense, time-wise at the time. It was doable. But then we'd spend hours together every other week and have these full, rich conversations. And so you'd be hearing from 5 to 7 people each time feedback on your chapter, and you'd get a sense of consensus. Okay, 4 people pointed this out. I'd better pay attention to that. And after time, it was oh yeah, that guy, his notes never work for me. I can disregard them. I mean, I appreciate the time and effort, right? But there's a disconnect. He doesn't get my writing, but I've got these 5 other people who see what I'm trying to accomplish. And, two of them, I really, really like right away. I pick up their notes and I'm devouring them. And the other three or four, it's like, okay, yeah, yeah, good.
Mhm.
Okay, meh, yeah, here, there. And then there's that guy I discount.
Right? Exactly. That's discernment, right?
Right,
Knowing who understands your story and who's going to help you make your story better versus people that don't.
right. Yeah. And the people you really learn through experience, through time to trust and value, it's because when they give you a note, it's got substance, it's got depth, it's specific to your piece. You know that they get your story, they understand your goals. So their
Mhm.
feedback isn't going to try to lead you in a different direction.
Right.
It's like, yep, they see my target and this is so helpful. And at that level, it really has nothing to do with personalities. I mean, that matters in a group, but at the level of taking feedback,
Mhm.
it's about what's on the page and how helpful it is.
Yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
I've never been in a large enough group that does feedback like that. I've right now I'm in a group with we have 3 to 4 depending on the time that we meet, and it's just great to have the conversations, right?
Right.
Because it's one thing to get the feedback and you get your notes and you read them, and a lot of times it's like, "Okay, yeah, I see it, I see it, I see it." But to then sit down and have the conversation, you get clarity on why they made those notes, right? Because sometimes their note might just be like, "This is confusing." Okay, great. I mean, I see it. Okay, it's confusing. But when they start talking about why it's confusing, be like, "Oh, actually, this is confusing for this specific reason, and I can go fix that." And it's so much more. I don't know. It feels so much more doable
Mhm.
once you've had the conversation with somebody than just receiving notes on a page. That makes
Right.
sense.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And, the conversations are energizing.
Yes.
Those are my favorite part of working with writers on their manuscripts. You
Hmm.
know, I give them notes and then I give them time to read the notes, digest them, think of their questions, plan what they want to do next. And then we get on a call and we talk. If it's, a full manuscript, we have a 2-hour discussion.
Hmm.
And that's when the light bulbs go off. And that's when people are smiling. And that's when there's back and forth and new things are being generated. And, I think without fail, I have writers say they're excited to go keep working on their project.
Right.
And many times they come to me and say, "Oh God, there's so many notes, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's right." But then we have the talk and it's like, "Ooh, now I'm fired up. Now I see the way forward. Now I understand this. Now I've got new ideas flowing." And it makes such a difference.
Yeah, a lot of times when I get feedback, whether it's from you or from other people, it's I start seeing the things that I'm doing over and over and over again, right? And so I start seeing where even if it's a different note, it's like really that's the same thing. And I just need to fix that one thing, maybe in every paragraph, but I need to fix that one thing. And it gives me purpose, right? Like I'm gonna go fix this. And that feels doable. And I think that's where feedback is the most helpful for me is when I can boil it down to let's make this one change. Let's grow
Mhm.
in this way as a writer. Let's fix this one thing that I do over and over and over again, or that I haven't ever paid attention to. And it makes me feel like I've leveled up as a writer, not just in this
Right.
manuscript.
Yes.
Um,
Fall means back to school, and even if you haven't been a student for ages, it is the perfect time to grab a pencil and hone your storycraft skills. I've got new workshops and group coaching sessions open for enrollment now at wordessential.com.
yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah. When I do the manuscript notes at the end, I always do a global letter and I'll say, okay, this looks like a lot, but here are the 3 things that if you focus on these things, the other things will fall into place like dominoes. So if character agency is a problem, if you focus on giving your character choices and see what the effects of those choices are, cause and
Yeah.
effect, that's going to solve a lot of plot problems, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, like, 20 things just became 3 things.
Right. And at the end of it, you can say, I nailed this manuscript's character agency. I understand agency at least a little bit better. And I'm
Right.
going to do better next time. Right. And that feeling is so empowering. Right.
Yes.
You now have this bit of knowledge that you did not have before. So
Mm-hmm.
yay
Yeah.
feedback.
Feedback. Good.
Yeah, totally. All right. So,
Yeah.
how do you find good feedback other than joining Alida's coaching groups or hiring Alida as your editor?
Well, that's first, of course. Um, yeah, I think it depends on what you're looking for. And it's so hard when so much of our lives is online now. So
Mhm.
much is digital. I'm in a group right now that I met through Under the Sun. One of my essays was published by Under the Sun, and then I was a reader for the following issue, and then like through that.
Yeah.
Um, so now I'm in a critique group, and it's fantastic because we come from this sort of common experience around this
Yeah.
literary journal, right?
Mhm.
And if you don't have that, if you're just like, well, do I look on Facebook? Do I try here? Do I try there? You might get lucky. I think it's going to be more of a crapshoot that way. So, if you have a writing friend who mentions being in a writing group, I would ask for a referral, right?
Feedback.
Piggyback. The other thing you can do is do something like volunteer with the literary journal and then
Mhm.
get to know some people who, once you meet people and you kind of see what their take is on writing, how they approach craft, how serious they are, right? What their genres are, then it's easier to say, yeah, I think I'd like to be in a group with this person.
Yeah.
Or these are people where I think I would trust sharing
Yeah.
my work and receiving feedback. And, we learn and grow together. You mentioned my coaching groups. So with the group setting, writers will often stay in touch with each other after the coaching group ends. So
Yeah.
that's a great way to connect with writers doing some kind of group,
Yes.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Classroom or
Unfortunately, maybe
yeah.
one or the other. You still have to kind of rely on this being a bit organic. Because otherwise, how are you going to know if you're going to mesh well with these other people? Do they read the same genre as you're writing? Do they like the same stories? Are they going to be interested or even willing to, or are they too
Mhm.
busy? All these sorts of things. I think number one, hang out where writers hang out, right? Meet people, meet people.
Where is that?
Well,
The
that's the
coffee
thing.
shop, the library. Um,
You got to find those spots that you are drawn to organically as a writer, because then you're going to find other people. Now, I got really lucky, and they just happened to be people in my own community, that I was able to kind of turn into a writing group because we were all on our own writers. But one of the gals that's in my writing group went to a writers conference and just met a couple of people at the writers conference, and now she's in a group with them as well. So she's took herself, and yes, she had to spend some money, and yes, she had to
mhm,
spend some time, but she
mhm.
took herself to a place where there were like-minded people, and
Right,
she went out on a limb and she introduced herself and she said, this is what I'm writing, and are you interested in joining me on this journey, because I would love to critique your stuff too. Right.
right.
Not an
Yep,
ask, but a give ask, right? Like, I would love to make this a communal thing. And she had, I mean, everybody wants this.
right.
You are not alone in wanting a feedback group. So
Yes.
just find the people that also want this, because they're there.
Mhm.
They are there. And you may have to
Right.
put yourself out there, and you may have to go somewhere or do something or spend a little money, but you can
Right.
end up with the right people for your situation.
Yes. And a lot of communities, urban and rural, have writing centers, writing workshops, community ed, arts centers, artist retreats. And so if you start looking at those, get those things on your radar and look for the events that you're interested in attending. And then, as you said, invest the time and the money. And it's not just investing in networking, it's investing in yourself. Do something you're going to
100%.
enjoy that you can grow from. And then go out on a limb and be social. You know, a lot of us are introverts and it's easy to go and write and leave. But
Totally.
yeah, you do have to put yourself out there.
100%. To piggyback on that, I just recently moved to a very small town in a very rural setting. And my town is like one main street and the library has 2 rooms in it. There is on the bulletin board a community writing group that meets once a month, right? It exists. If it doesn't exist in your town, go to the library and say, I want to host a writing group. I guarantee you they have a community room that they would be willing to let you use, and you can put up a poster and see who shows up. I mean, these places of readers, libraries, also happen to host writers sometimes. So it just cracked me up when the first time I walked in the library. I was like, hey, there's a writing group here. So I don't know how many people are in it. I have not joined it, but even here, 1,600 people in town and done. There's a writer's group.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway,
It's amazing, isn't it?
You can find them.
You can for sure. And you can start one. I mean, the nice thing about being the moderator of a group is that you get to set the bar.
Yes.
You know, is everyone in this group writing in a certain genre? Is everyone in this group going to commit to reading a craft book once a quarter?
Yeah.
You know, and discussing it. Is everyone in this group, right? What kind of feedback do we expect? What are the requirements to be here? And what do we not accept? I mean, the hard piece of being the moderator is if somebody is, you know, too like surly. I don't mean inappropriate, like an obvious out, but somebody where there's a real tension, some kind of conflict, some group dynamic stuff, then you get to be the one who shoulders that. But
right. Totally.
You know, that doesn't happen that often.
No. And a lot of times those people take themselves out anyway because they're not getting the responses that they want. So,
right. Yes.
You can cross your fingers.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So go forth and make a writing group.
That's right. And then don't be too hard on yourself with the criticism. I think that's the other part, is how to accept criticism. If you know you don't accept criticism very well, practice. You know, you need to practice taking the criticism, allowing yourself to have that humility. We are all artists. This is subjective in some respect. And also we are all growing and we are all learning.
Right.
So we need, even the best authors are still going to be telling you that, you know, this didn't work, or that needed to be revised, or this needed feedback. You know, so it's, understand that you're on a journey and take the criticism appropriately.
Yeah. So a great rule that we can assign to ourselves, or if we're leading a group that we can establish for the group, is that you don't get to explain something unless you're asked, right? So when a reader says, okay, this isn't working for me because of X, Y, and Z, the defensive writer is going to say, oh, but this is what I meant by it. And this is what you didn't see on, and this is blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, no, I mean, that's fine.
Right.
But when I, as a reader, look at what's on the page, right, all the stuff that's going through your head, it's not there. It's not being communicated. And if it were, the reader wouldn't have made this comment.
Right, exactly. I think usually when I get feedback like that, what I like to do is then ask questions about what exactly I usually it's with whatever I wanted to have in mind, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I know that this was supposed to do this. So ask questions around what they were asking that involves that so that you can then pinpoint where did I go wrong? Where did I
Mm-hmm.
not explain this? Where did this not show up? So that I can either fix it because I want it to be there or two, change it because it needs to be changed. So,
Right.
yeah, ask
Right.
lots of questions. Questions are the best
Yeah.
way to accept criticism.
Yeah. And I think they're the best way to get over yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like if your first reaction to criticism is,
You're
oh, they don't get it, then step back and say, okay, why didn't they get it? Because obviously, I mean,
yeah,
sometimes it's just a mismatch between what's on the page and the
right.
reader.
But the question then will be obvious because you start asking questions about why they didn't get it and you see that they just didn't like your character, they didn't like the book, or they were thrown off by, the fact that they might be racist, or this is in a setting that they didn't like, or, whatever, thing was triggering them that didn't have anything to do with your story. It becomes obvious. If it
Mm-hmm.
is about your story, it also becomes obvious. And then you can work out where that mismatch or miscommunication is.
Right. Right. And if your reaction is defensive, you can miss out on
Mhm.
really great constructive feedback.
Yes.
You miss the point of it then, and you might have a reader who's coming at it sincerely and constructively and is giving you something useful,
Yeah.
right? But you're going to miss the
Mhm.
point if you're defensive.
Yeah, absolutely. So go
Mhm.
into it with an open mind, open hands. And if
Yes.
you need to take a few days afterwards to calm down and go through it, that's okay.
Yeah, which a lot of writers
Work
do.
through it.
And
Hmm.
that is a good thing. Yeah.
That's me 100%. I need my comments a few days in advance of the conversation so I can get over it. And then I need a few days after the conversation so I can get over it and get back to work.
Mhm.
But I would never, ever treat my critiquers as though what they're offering me is not valuable. Like
Right.
I want that feedback, even if it sometimes hurts my little heart.
It usually only stings for a little bit, and then it's like,
Just a little.
"Oh, yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
kinda
Okay.
right. Yep. Alright, yep, gonna change that. Alright, time to
And then you
revise."
read that chapter back again and you say, yep, that's stronger. I'm better
Uh-huh.
for it. So,
Totally. My newsletter, A Room Full of Books and Pencils, is growing every week with new reflections, writing tips, and transcripts of the podcast. It's also where I make announcements about things like upcoming writing workshops and coaching sessions. Check out A Room Full of Books and Pencils at booksandpencils.substack.com. Thank you for listening to the Storyworks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.